Okay, so now we're going to look at how to subtract integers using a number line. And before we get to that, just a quick review of adding using a number line. So for example, -3 plus 7, when adding a positive, we always move to the right. So we start at -3 and we add 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Also, when adding a negative, we move to the left. So let's say, let's just erase that. Let's say we were at 4 and we added -5. We start at 4. When we add a negative, we move to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we get -1. So just keep those in mind. Think about how we added using a number line. So now we're going to look at subtracting using a number line. So let's say, for example, we have -3 minus -1. So normally, subtraction, we move to the left. But in this case, we're subtracting a negative. Think about what happened. What happened when you added a negative? When you added a negative, you move to the left. And so if adding and subtracting are opposite operations, that must mean that when you subtract a negative, you actually are moving to the right. So this, we're going to start at -3, and when we subtract a negative, it's actually like we're adding. So we're moving to the right. And our answer will be -2. And this is why on the other video I said that when you subtract, it's like adding the opposite. So really you can think of it, if you prefer, as an addition problem. So let's do another example. -5, whoops, this one's red, that's okay. -5 minus -2. So let's erase this. So we start at -5. So here we start. And we are subtracting, but because we're subtracting a negative, we're going to move to the right. So we're going to move to the right 2. 1, 2. And our answer for that will be -3. Again, you can think of that as adding the opposite if you want. So here we add the opposite. So that's why we get that answer. So let's do a few where maybe we start with something positive. So let's get our eraser. So in this case, we're going to start at 5. But because we're subtracting a negative, we're going to move to the right. So it's really like we just did 5 plus 2. Because subtracting a negative, you add the opposite. And one more like that. Let's go 3 minus -4. So we start at 3. And because we're subtracting a negative, we move to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we get 7. Again, you can think of that as adding the opposite. So these were all examples of subtracting a negative. So what happens then if we subtract a positive? So I'll do that in green. So for example, -3 minus 2. Now I can write it like that, or I can write it like this. Both of these mean the exact same thing. So just don't get messed up with how it's written. So both of these are -3 minus +2. So when you subtract something that is positive, you are going to move to the left. And so let's do an example of that. So we start at -3 and we're subtracting a positive, so we move to the left. So in this case, we're going to end up at -5. So let's do another one like that. So -7 minus +3. Again, I could have written that this way. These are identical. So when I am subtracting something that is positive, So I'm going to start at negative 7. I'm going to move to the left. 1, 2, 3. And for both of these, doesn't matter which way you look at it, the answer is negative 10. So we'll do one more like that, maybe something that started being positive. So 5, whoops, let's just undo that. So we'll start with 5 minus positive 7. And so again, I can write it that way, or I can write it that way. And for this one, I'm going to start at 5. Because I'm subtracting something positive, I'm going to move to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to end up at negative 2. So hopefully that makes it maybe a little bit easier. You can see how you could use a number line to help you. And definitely, yes, subtraction is more confusing than addition, but here's just a quick review. So we did the adding video previously. So remember, if you're adding something positive, you move to the right. We're used to that. Things like 6 plus 3, right? We'd start at 6 and we move to the right. If you add a negative, you're going to move to the left. So 6 plus negative 3, even though we're adding, because we're adding a negative, we move to the left. And then subtraction works the opposite, because remember, adding and subtracting are opposite operations. So that means if we're subtracting something positive, we're actually going to move to the left. Subtracting a positive is really like our normal subtraction. So something like 7 minus 5, right? We're used to that. We do 7 minus 5. We've done that for years. Well, what are we doing there? We're subtracting a positive. To make that into a harder problem, we could make it negative 7 minus 5. We're still going to move to the left. And then subtracting a negative, that's something like negative 1 minus negative 5. And really, that's like adding. And so there, we're going to move to the right. So again, these are confusing. And for you to get it, you have to keep practicing. So keep working on it, keep practicing. With hard work, you will get better at adding and subtracting integers.